Good morning, everyone. I'm Krishnan, Vice Chairman of Dhabi Chapter. Today we have with us Yusuf Hassan, partner KPMG. He is going to decode IFRS 15 and IFRS 16 to our members. So we are expecting close to 200 plus audience over here. He's the master, everyone knows this, he is the master in IFRS 15 and 16 and he has conducted so many seminars. Just I'm going to have a quick glimpse of IFRS 15 and 16 with him, and the detailed one of 1 hour presentation will be uploaded at a separately. Yusuf, thanks for coming and accepting our invite. It's a pleasure to have you over here.
Thank you, Krishnan. It's always a pleasure. Always a pleasure to present at the Institute. And I really appreciate the opportunity, and not just the opportunity to present and share with you my technical knowledge, but the opportunity to connect with all your members. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's our pleasure. It's our pleasure. So, Yusuf, the IFRS 15 and 16 has been implemented from 2018. So, my first question to you is, what are the biggest challenges the company faces on the implementation of IFRS 15?
See, IFRS 15 is a standard that has been, as you correctly pointed out, being implemented for a number of years. It's based on contracts. Contracts have become increasingly sophisticated. The way people are paying, the services that are being delivered, contracts have become very, very challenging. So therefore, the reading of the contracts and understanding of the rights and obligations that emanate from these contracts need to be accounted for. In practice, we're seeing that people are having lots of debates. There's a lot of judgment calls on whether a separate promise or performance obligation exists in the contract. So this is one of the bigger challenges. We're not having as much challenge on percentage completion versus point-in-time recognition at this point. I think the market has somehow accepted this in the real estate industry, etc. But I think the area where I have still a lot of challenge is on identification of promises or performance obligations in the contract. Measurement, not so much, but performance obligations has been a large area of concern.
Yeah, that's true. Many of the companies are facing the issue of recognition based on the performance, basically particularly on the real estate or on the oil and gas sector. They're facing a big challenge on the performance obligation, what they have to do.
True.
Okay. Coming back on IFRS 16, again, how the SME industries, at least the big corporates, they are all perfect because for them the accounting, because they have the sophisticated system. How the SMEs are able to incorporate IFRS 16 into their books. Basically, many of the companies, they may not have implemented, they may not have recognized IFRS 16. Still, many people are talking about how to segregate between the interest and the depreciation and other things. How do you perceive that, how the companies are implementing it?
See, look, IFRS 16 they spoke about for a long time, and people were anticipating and expecting. There was a lot of complaints against the standard, by virtue of the comment letters. The reality is the standard has been issued. Lessees, big and small, have both been impacted. But the standard itself has a lot of variance in terms of the liability. You see, the issue is the liability creation, correct, right? Yep. The asset is not so much a problem. The asset is a function of the liability, but there's been tough questions around how long is the lease term?
Correct, exactly. That's
because the longer the lease term, the bigger the liability. And people are arguing shorter lease terms to manage the liability. Then people are arguing discount rates. They're arguing, whether the payment is actually entirely for a lease. So there's been various different arguments happening. In fact, some clients are arguing whether an arrangement they enter into is actually a lease and should they be recognizing a liability. So these are the questions that exist, right, in the market. In terms of computation, I have seen some challenges on variable payments. So some people believe that by creating a variable payment structure, they can avoid a liability. However, if there are built-in fixed payments, implied fixed payments, it's not variable.
Okay. Yeah.
If you have a base. So these are some of the questions we see in practice. We have to judge. There's a lot of judgment involved. Smaller companies have been, maybe to some degree underestimated the impact.
Exactly.
One of the most significant impacts other than the accounting has been covenants. You have a lot more liabilities on your balance sheet, long-term liabilities, which are akin to borrowings. And if you're looking at debt equity ratios, your debt equity ratios have changed.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's good. It has changed quite a lot for many of the companies. particularly even the big companies like airlines and all, it is having a huge impact.
Huge, massive impacts, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Now the last question. Now the corporate tax is going to come. How it is going to impact IFRS 15 and 16? Basically, many people, there are many things like particularly the interest and depreciation. Now in the IFRS 16, we are doing a notional interest and notional depreciation from the leases. How it is going to have an impact of corporate taxes on IFRS 15 and 16. Then, in addition to that, on the deferred taxation or the prior year losses, carry forward of the losses, how the accounting concept or how the accounting it's going to be changed.
Industry, yeah. See, look, I mean, deferred tax is on our doorstep. I mean, we know that. So tax and deferred tax will happen, right? There's an inevitability, and companies will start paying tax. And unlike VAT, VAT was much more simpler to address because VAT is in and out, and there's a control account which you manage this. This is going to affect all things. I mean, think of unrealized gains, unrealized losses, notional income revenues that are not represented by cash.
Correct.
Big challenges we anticipate and expect. We don't know which way the tax authority is going to go. If the tax authority accepts IFRS profit as profit, then there shouldn't be deferred tax consequences. However, if they don't, and this is where the challenge lies. I mean, if they're looking at things like unrealized gains and losses on investment property, can you be taxed on that? You don't have cash. So these are the areas. And, you know, we've identified a number of areas where the accounting and the cash flow won't match. Effective interest for some, you know, IFRS 9 adjustments.
Yeah, exactly.
There's various matters where, you know, tax and accounting will be divergent. So the question is, how will the tax authority, once the tax law comes into play, will then be able to discern. If the tax law comes in this year, and if there are temporary differences, we may have to account for deferred tax now. Unless the tax authority says, look, we're going to deem something at 0 or something like that. If the temporary difference arises now, we're going to have to account for it now. Even in the quarter. But look, we don't know. And until we do have clearer knowledge of this, we can then work out deferred tax. Now, coming back to IFRS 15, areas where I see challenge for deferred tax, variable consideration.
Exactly.
Matching. IFRS 15 moves away from matching. The cash is going out, you may be making cash, you're paying cash now, but the revenue may be split over time. Or you may be forced to recognize revenue up front and not be able to deduct the cost now. So this is not going to follow the cash flow. In terms of the lease accounting, quite interesting, if you are lessee, you're going to have a right of use asset and a liability. The interest is on an effective interest basis.
Exactly.
It's a liability. It's not linked in any way to your cash expense you're paying on the lease rental. So there is going to be a challenge. Typically, in countries where there is deferred tax, they look at the right of use asset as a separate asset and they calculate the tax based on it and the liability. But this, until we know the tax law, I can't give you a definitive answer.
Okay, thanks for sharing the glimpse of what we are going to talk about it. Members, stay tuned for the detailed presentation of Yusuf Hassan on IFRS 15, 16. Thanks a lot, Mr. Yusuf.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for it. Thank you.